Welcome in, everybody. I have been meaning to make this video for quite some time, but things have been very busy and I'm just getting back into the swing of this. So let's go over how I made 559 wheel horsepower and 645 pound-feet of torque on my stock long block BMW E28. So this is a completely stock long block B34, so M30 B34, 3.4 liter, 12 valve overhead valve engine. It's still got rocker arms, but it is an overhead valve. And this is bone stock cam, stock head gasket from 1987. This is 8-to-1 compression US spec engine, so it has that lower compression, which is part of the reason they love boost. Another reason is because they have really beefy, overly engineered components for the time. They just over-engineered things because they couldn't get them engineered right to the limit where they can save a lot on materials and things like that. So these have like slugs for pistons and pretty heavy-duty rods. Sorry, I've got a camera here just kind of set up. I can show you a little bit. You'll just have to pause and jump back and forth if you want to see all this in detail, but they didn't, I don't have a digital readout on this, so you'll just have to bear with me, okay? So we'll set it there and we'll jump back and forth. So I get people asking all the time if they want to see my tune, and you can see it right here. So I've got the tune on the right. The fuel is kind of arbitrary. All fuel maps kind of look similar. They just have different numbers in them. This is a VE table on Megasquirt. And then over on the right, this is probably what you'll really want to see. This is the advanced table. And I've actually put up the Spark Advance up here so you can see the readout. So hopefully these are all big enough. Tried to put as much information that I think people would want to see as possible. So we'll go over this, okay? So this is the third pole. And on this pole, I turned up the boost, just wanted to see what it would do because I had previously made 25 PSI of boost on the street. And the pole before this, I think I was only making 22 or so, 21. And so I just turned up the boost controller just to try to get it closer to where I had felt it on the street, because I knew, okay, it'll hold on the street. It was pulling really well on the street, so let's try doing it replicating it on the dyno. And it didn't want to make a lot of boost on the dyno, but it still made a surprising 560 horsepower. The wheels at 4,600 RPMs, and at 4,400, let's go back and just take a look at it. Gosh, it's really hard to see, but at 4225, it made 645 foot-pounds of torque. So I mean, it is really making some cylinder pressure at that time. Also, you can see as we turned the boost up on these different runs, the first run was 368 horsepower and 426 foot-pounds of torque, this dotted line right here. And then I went 507 at 612 foot-pounds, and then 559 was this big one up here with 645 foot-pounds of torque. So if we jump back over to the tune, this is the start of the run. So it's floored. You can see it starts to make positive boost pressure. Down here I've got the boost as 2.5. I even have the back pressure ratio because we had a back pressure sensor to see what the back pressure ratio was on this particular turbine. So this is the 67 millimeter turbine on a 57 millimeter compressor Holset HE341, which this one is, the 341 is the 57 millimeter compressor, and the 60 millimeter is the HE351, which is most common. This is like a one and a half year turbo that they changed away from pretty quick. So let's take a look at it. So I have 45% ethanol content, which is actually methanol. I put methanol blended in gasoline as a flex fuel, and I just ran a different flex fuel curve that I can share with you guys later. But basically it's 35% methanol, which is a little over 100 octane. So that's how I'm getting my octane on this. The ethanol, the E85 station near me has stopped selling E85, so I just found another source to get an alcohol-based fuel to mix into the gasoline, and it worked really well. I have some other testing videos on that you can check out if you want. However, I've got this ramping up, and you can see the boost coming in. It's already at 15 psi of boost right here at 4,300, and then the boost really comes on, and where all my power is made is between like 5,600 RPM and 3,500 RPM. So right here. So boost hasn't even fully come on yet, but I'm making, that's where the lump is in the graph. So if we jump back over to the graph, you can see right here, there's 3,500 and there's 5,500. So really right in here is where it all is happening. And based on what I have been talking with people that are a lot smarter than me, and working with Bradley on the turbo, he's very familiar with how these turbos respond and how engines should produce power based on the turbo. This limitation we're seeing is head and cam, basically right here. So where we're falling off, it's just head and cam limited, and that makes sense. I mean, I'm on a completely stock head and cam, everything, valve springs, so we're just losing that power. Like, boost is continuing. We're still making 20 pounds of boost all the way, 23 pounds of boost all the way to 6,500, but our engine VE is falling off, our efficiency. So where the engine can make power is where it was designed to make power originally, on the stock head and cam, which is right here. So it's basically just taking the stock curve that it would make power in right here, and it's just amplifying it as we add boost. So yeah, we've got, and you'll see on this as we come up on the ramp, the AFR is fairly rich. It's in the Dyno AFR, but you have to also remember we're on a methanol blend. So adding, the more methanol you have, typically the more power you can make, because there is actually oxygen in the fuel. So you're adding oxygen. You could look at it as you're adding like liquid oxygen, liquid boost. It has some properties that as you add a little bit more, it helps cool, and it gives you a little more power because you're giving it another source of oxygen. The other thing you'll notice is on the back pressure ratio, right after we make peak torque and peak power, the back pressure ratio goes up. So we're basically like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and then as soon as we go out of efficiency, we start gaining a lot of back pressure ratio. I also, on the dyno, tried in a couple of different pulls here, I tried to pull fuel out and lean it up a little bit. It just wanted to make more power when it was a richer mixture, so I just left it in. That's one thing that's interesting about AFR is, like, you would think at like a 10.0 AFR, even into the 9s, like, you'd think I would be losing a lot of power in here, but it really was happy and it made more power, so I just left it in there. I also think I basically lost control of the injectors somewhere in here. The Megasquirt says 70% duty cycle. I think it even goes up to 75% duty cycle somewhere in here, 74. And as I would try to move around the fuel table, take in a few percent here and a few percent there, it wasn't really changing. So like, we do back-to-back pulls, and I just think at this point the injector is mostly just open. Solenoids, like injectors, they really work well between, like, when you're pulse widthing them, between like 30 and 70%. Usually after 85% on an injector, that's basically the max of the injector. You can go a little bit further, but I don't know if I'm 100% right on that. I don't have a ton of experience maxing out an injector like that, but I started to lose control of it, and the small changes weren't doing anything versus like a large change. And so I think at this point, the injectors are pretty well open, which makes sense. I'm on 80-pound Deca 80 injectors on 40% alcohol blended in my fuel, and so we're probably getting to the point where we're close to maxing out those injectors. So we could pull a little bit of alcohol content out, because you can take them a little bit further on gasoline. There's less volume that you need to flow, less mass of fuel. But anyway, that's just a little side note. Just if you're, bear with me. I'm just going to try to give you as much information as possible. It's kind of a rambletron, but if you want to hear how it's done, this is where it's at. So I have also kept the ignition advance really soft. You can see right here in the green, it's 13 degrees of advance, basically all the way through my power zone. So like 35, it's 19, and then as boost goes up, once boost levels off, it's like 14 to 13, all the way to peak power. So right through there, it was like 14, 13, 16 degrees at 4400, 18 degrees at 41. So it is making, right where it peaks on power, it has pretty much what I would consider almost optimal timing, like 18 degrees, 16 degrees for this setup. So it just drops off as the boost goes up. And my whole goal with this was to make the power with boost and less with ignition timing. I mean, we're on a stock engine, and being at 4,000 RPMs at 18, 19 pounds of boost is already pretty low, a low RPM. It's a little bit hard on the rods to make power that low. So it would really be ideal if this had a mild camshaft and it was pushing the peak power about 1,000 RPMs further out. So if we went from like this 48 to like 5 and could rev it to like 67 and hold the peak power until like 67 or 7, if we could move peak torque, about 1,000 RPM higher, and we could hold it, we could make actually quite a bit more power up top. But yeah, basically this thing is useless as far as like making more torque production and power after about 5,500 RPMs. It's all over. So we did rev it out to 6,500. I just wanted to see what it would do, but it didn't produce any additional power. So if you're looking at like a stock M30 and you're wondering how far to rev it out, honestly, you could just set your rev limiter at like 6,200 RPM, 63. You probably want to rev right out till 6 if you're just rowing between gears, but all your power is being made at like right around 5,000 RPMs, and your peak torque is like 42, 4,300. So it doesn't really do much. You're just risking hurting a rocker. These things are temperamental with rockers. So there's that. It was like I think it was like a mildly warm day where I am. The ambient air, I think, was somewhere in like the 80 to 90 degree Fahrenheit. You can see with this intercooler I have, it goes, by the end of the run, it goes up to 140 degrees intake temperature. During the run, it gets about like 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty normal. The back pressure ratio is following the boost curve really well, and it's very efficient all the way through where peak power is. So as Bradley and I were talking, this turbo combination, that essentially the turbine, that larger turbine, has been very helpful in smoothing out the power and reducing the back pressure ratio. And the reason we were trying to do that is because if you think of an engine as an air pump, each side of the pump you want essentially equal pressure on, because if the exhaust has a higher pressure than the intake, then it won't be able to pump as efficiently. So you get a little bit of residual pressure from the exhaust going back into the cylinder, and it essentially makes your engine smaller. So that's why you always hear people say, oh, I want, like drag racing or high performance applications, you want as close to 1.1 1-to-1 back pressure to boost pressure as possible. So if you had like 14 pounds of boost, 15 pounds of boost, you would want the exact same on the drive side of the turbine on the turbo. That way the engine is basically breathing the same atmosphere on both sides. When it's naturally aspirated, that's what the engine's doing for the most part. If you don't have any other restriction, you're exhausting into atmosphere and you're breathing into atmosphere, and then that way it's all left up to just the pump, the way the engine pumps air. So that's why that's important and why we look at it. And yeah, my new iteration of the turbo that Bradley has sent me is even better than this, and I'll share that with you later on. But we've got the back pressure down to like 1.1 all the way up to like 6,000 RPMs almost, and it's really impressive. It's a very efficient setup for this level of power production. I don't know. You can stop anywhere and look. I have a ton of the data down here below. Like as I punch through, this is just the whole run. I mean, they're only a few seconds long. Like if you look at the timestamp down here, 43.5, and we go to the end of the run, and where we lift is 49.1. So 49 basically. So you get, a 7-second pull on the dyno, and that's it. But basically, if you're trying to do the same, my suggestion is, well, you want to run as high octane of fuel as possible. So the very first thing is getting a quality fuel pump, making sure you can use stock everything. So I have like stock fuel rail, stock fuel pressure regulator, but you'll need larger injectors and a larger fuel pump. The stock fuel lines are fine. I have the 5/8 lines. And I have the stock fuel filter, but you'll just want to make sure that you have very good fuel supply and you have high quality fuel. If you can get E85 or methanol, or if you're willing to pay for like some sort of race fuel, that's really what you need. The low compression in this engine really aids it in taking boost so well. And you can see right here, here's some of the numbers. But if you're trying to do the same, you just want to do everything you want to make the power with boost, not ignition timing. You can follow my ignition table over here if you want an example of what to do. And my suggestion, if you're just on like 91 or 93 pump gas, is don't really go over 400 horsepower without increasing the octane significantly, without using like ethanol and stuff. I ran for years on 91 octane with about 400 horsepower. It was like 385 wheel horsepower, and never had a problem with this level of ignition, and just keeping it a good air fuel ratio. Like really a rich air fuel ratio, like if you're like 11.5, 11.8 to 1 all the way through boost, just keep it rich, drown it in fuel, make sure you have a good fuel system. And I have a very basic turbo manifold. I have other videos on it on my channel. It's just stock turbo or stock exhaust manifolds flipped upside down with some 1.5 Schedule 40 pipe into the turbo. You don't need a crazy exhaust manifold. You just need to get that exhaust to the turbo. And if you're looking to make similar power to this, you can do it on a stock cam, but you just have a more limited peak power range. Basically 3,500 to 5,500 on this particular turbo is a 57 compressor, 67 turbine. If you're looking for a turbo that will do this exact same thing, feel free to reach out to my turbo sponsor, Bradley at Savage Fabrication. I'll leave a link to his pages below. He has a YouTube channel, he has an Instagram, and he has a website. He is very talented and understands these concepts very well and works with them on a daily basis to help his customers. So he can get you a turbo setup to do very similar. That would be my suggestion, is reach out to someone who's knowledgeable and just accept their understanding of this and go with the suggestions they have, because a lot of the times there's a lot more that goes into this, and someone who's very knowledgeable is very helpful to have on your side. But yeah, there we go. If you want to do the same, also a big shout out to Otis at Rapid Spool. He's the one that started all of this. He inspired me like 8 years ago to do this. He made 600 and something horsepower on a stock long block, or actually I think it was 500. I think I've technically beaten his record for a stock long block. He actually had a cam in his, but yeah, stock bottom end M30. He had the record, and I think I broke it. But I'm very excited to just work with people like this around the world, and get inspired by each other. That's what it's all about. So go have fun. Dump some comments in if you have any questions in the comments down below. And yeah, shout out to Otis. Shout out to Bradley at Savage Fabrication, and everyone who's helped me along the way, especially my brother, who has given me countless hours of help on this and putting in all the blood, sweat, and tears. So yeah, we're looking forward to potentially doing a mild camshaft in the near future. I've got to look into what options I can do, and we'll go back and we're going to try to break 650 wheel horsepower. I think we can do it. No problem with Bradley's turbo, but we're on the edge of my injectors, and we're on the edge of my clutch, and we're on the edge of where the stock camshaft wants to be. So yeah, anyway, thanks for listening. Enjoy the Rambletron. I'm just going to upload this full raw video, and if anyone cares, they'll hear it out till the end. So thanks again. If you want to help out the channel, become a member, subscribe, go help out the sponsors, go help out Bradley if you're looking for a turbo, and thanks again. Talk to you soon.